Alan.
Hey, how are you? I'm also joined by Lacey Russell of the Daily Mississippian as well
Hi,
on this
Mr.
interview.
Perry.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
All right. Well, first of all, Ms. Perry, in Chancellor Jones's interview today, I kind of asked him questions about what you guys talked about at the IHL meeting in Jackson. You referenced some violations like the medical center not getting board approval for contracts in excess of $250,000, not getting approval for leases in excess of $100,000, and not being able to produce documents on the Gamma knife. Now, Chancellor Jones today told me that when they first started these projects, the prices, the money required was under the amount that the board needed to approve. Once it went over, that's when they came to you. Just kind of speak on that a little bit. I mean, is that accurate?
I listened to his interview and actually agree with a great deal he said, but I have a little different perspective on it where it takes you. So let me start with that. The chancellor said, and he's correct, big organizations are going to make mistakes. We don't say that they shouldn't. I don't think that there's an university or other institution in this state that doesn't have mistakes. Our problem is not the particular mistake, but that there is no real system in place to manage contracts and to secure the approval by the board when it's necessary.
Okay.
And it was the delay in implementing that system, and actually it's still not implemented, that has been one of the bones of contention, as you will maybe notice. I don't know if you read that audit, which I have not read in a while, but which is really long. There's a Lawson software program that they had bought to do this in, I guess, 2008, and it's still not completely implemented. So what we need is, listen, we don't expect perfection from anybody, and nobody expects there to be no mistakes in an organization this big. But the problem that we saw was a failure first to have a system in place to monitor the contact tracks, and second, that getting the information to the board about approval of those was often incomplete, late, and it just did not let us approve the contracts and have the information we needed. So it's not any one of these in particular. It's the system, and a kind, on our sense, a failure that there was not enough attention to the instructions of the board that this needs to be taken care of in a business-like manner.
Okay, you mentioned this contract management system. We spoke to someone from the medical center yesterday, and they told us improvements have been ongoing, especially since the establishment of a formal Office of Contracts Administration back in 2012. Apparently, in the last 2 weeks, they've also deployed a new contract management module as a part of their business enterprise software, which has been the culmination of more than 2 years of work. I mean, I kind of want to ask, like, how does that relate to what you're saying?
Well, it says exactly that they're now doing what they should have done years ago, and we are actually I'm pleased with the progress, and I'm pleased with what appears to be now a real effort to get it done in efficient.
So when did you want these results? When did you want a system of contract management, what they have now? When did you want those results?
Well, as you know, we started complaining about this several years ago, and they bought that contract management system in 2008. And it's not for me to say, gee, it should have been on June the 16th, 19, whatever, or 2000. It's that it did not seem to be getting done. I'm hearing a background on my own recording, and it's making it hard for me to talk. Can you tell what that is?
No, everything sounds fine on our part.
I'm getting an echo, and when I'm hearing, I don't know why that would be.
If you don't have headphones,
it makes it very difficult for me to hear what I'm saying because I keep listening to myself about 2 seconds later. It's better now. Let me try to go ahead. But at any rate, yes, since the audit came out, and it became serious, I think, and it came out in the fall, the staff of the medical center has taken it to heart that this needed to be done. They have come at it with a good effort, a good will, and I couldn't be more pleased with the efforts that the staff at the medical center
So they've made improvements. It just didn't happen when you wanted them to, right? Is that what you're basically saying?
That's exactly. There was no effort or energy. This could have been done years ago.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. And I also want to ask you about now the Gamma knife situation. It was mentioned at the meeting yesterday. When I talked to Chancellor Jones this morning, he mentioned they had a business analysis report that said that was a future, in terms of treating brain tumors and what that's used for, except they didn't have a way to implement that right away, but it proved that it would work. They found out later this technology was kind of dated, so they sent that back to the company for credit. So actually the university didn't lose any money in that Gamma knife transaction, is what Chancellor Jones told me.
I don't think they lost any money. Our concern was that the auditors went out there and said, "Where's the Gamma knife?" Nobody
they sent
really
it back
knew.
according
They
to
said,
Chancellor Jones.
"Well, okay, second, we didn't have any records showing where because we might have sent the Gamma knife back. I don't know if it's actually ever delivered, but if Chancellor Jones says it was, I'm sure that must be true. But we'd sent them the money, and there wasn't any record. We couldn't even find the records where we had paid for it, as I understand from the audit report. And the auditor had to call the people that sold us to and say, "What have we paid you and how much is it?" That is just not good business management. Now, I think that it's all going to work out in the end. I'm sure it will. And I'm sure the university will get value, but that's not an efficient way to run a business. And that was our concern. And that's just one of the failures to have the contract system. If you had a contract management system in place, it would track all that. So it's not just like take this violation, that violation. It's that these contracts are scattered around, or at least they were. They're now centralizing that, where you really couldn't find them. You couldn't figure out who had authority to buy what. You couldn't find who had authority to manage what. And I am very pleased that they're now getting a system in to handle that. That was the issue on the contract management system. And then to get board approval, I think that it will flow directly from that, so that you really can't go through the contract thing without getting board approval. And that's what we wanted. And I think we're all going to be happy and satisfied when it finally gets done. Although I haven't.
Well, let me say this: did you think that alone merited not renewing Chancellor Jones's contract?
Well, it wasn't that alone. That was indicative of the concern that we had, as I described yesterday. There's other things about the financial information and analysis that we got.
What would that be? Can you go into detail about that?
Well, I can remember quickly what I tried to say yesterday.
Well, I mean, it was significant enough to not renew his contract. So, I mean, I'm sure you can.
I know. Well, it was significant enough, and it was significant enough for me to mention it yesterday. You've listened, I guess, to what I said. But at any rate, there was, for example, back in 2012, we came up with a cash shortfall where we need an urgent bond issue. That's not the kind of surprise that the trustees need. There should be a better budget analysis problem. Some of the projects that have been presented to the board, the analysis has just not been correct. Spreadsheets don't flow right. The numbers don't look right. The assumptions are unsupported. And so it is a general sense. Now, listen, Dr. Jones is not supposed to do the financial analysis. We know that. Dr. Keaton isn't supposed to do it. And Dr. Keaton, let me say, this is nothing to do with Dr. Keaton. It is the problem of an inadequate structure, perhaps of staff, of a system at the university to give us the financial information we need. And it's not where you go and say, they didn't give me X information on a date. It's that when we get stuff, I lack confidence because of the experience I've had that what I'm getting has been fully vetted.
Okay. I'm going to let Lacey answer a few questions, and I'll get back on it. Lacey.
Hi, Mr. Perry. This is Lacey Russell with the Daily Mississippian.
Lacey. Were you here yesterday?
No,
Did
sir.
I talk?
I was not. My news editor, Logan Kirkland, was there.
Okay.
But, it's nice to finally get in touch with you. Now, I have a few questions. I know today is kind of the eve of this protest that's going to be occurring on campus tomorrow. Yesterday, you were quoted saying, "It will do no good to anyone, and least of all Ole Miss, to continue in a prolonged and rancorous public dispute." Do you still stand by that, and can you elaborate on that statement?
Well, I'm in favor of everybody saying whatever they want to. It's a free country and protest are a way of life, and college campuses are a particularly good place to do it. And I am interested in what everybody has to say. I think the rhetoric that people have used, particularly in statements, and the inflammatory accusations that have no basis in fact are bad for Ole Miss. I listened, y'all didn't ask about it. I heard you ask Chancellor Jones about whether this had anything to do with the Affordable Care Act, or what some people call the Obamacare Act. I mean, I just read an article that said that's what the reason for this is. That is just not good for Ole Miss to say that this is about a political dispute about that. It's not. I'm confident that there are people on the IHL board that feel very strongly on both sides of that. I don't know that we've ever discussed it with Dr. Jones, or I don't think we've ever officially discussed it. We sit around and, like everybody does, and talk politics, but that's not what this is about. And so I agree with Dr. Jones about that and would like to help put an end to that rumor. It's those kind of rumors where people are coming up with motives that don't exist for our action, that cause suspicion. This is not, I think I said yesterday, a political thing where we're out to get somebody in that will bring back rebel flags. I personally am in favor of every change Dr. Jones has made, and I think maybe all the board is. I think all the board is. And so this is not that. Those kind of accusations and hype and hyperbole have not helped the university. That's what I meant to say, and I think I said it.
Right. So when the board made this decision, did you have any, expectation that this decision would blow up as big as it did? Did you think that, I've heard many national media outlets are going to be in Oxford, Mississippi tomorrow reporting on this protest. Did you think that this decision would make national news?
I thought it was a possibility, but we thought it was not in our control as to whether that happened. That's in the hands of others. And I think some of the language that has been used and some of the reasons that have been assigned, if somebody says, gee, this is about the state of Mississippi trying to take Ole Miss back to using rebel flags, yeah, that's going to get national media. Nobody should be surprised at that. It's terrible that it happened, I think. I think it's bad for the state, bad for Ole Miss, and that's, I thought that could happen. I was hoping it didn't happen, but it did. Mm-hmm. And did I totally expect it? No. The language that people have used and the reasons and excuses they've given for their understanding for what the board did have just amazed me in their ability to speculate.
Right, Mr. Perry. Now, let me ask you this. Now, you work for the state of Mississippi. You work for, all the institutions you're over are public universities, which is the people. And so, do the people's opinions not factor into this situation at all? You're talking about big time donors that are taken away. You're talking about contracts that weren't, approved for $250,000. You're talking about $20 million from the Ford Foundation. You're talking about possible big time donors taking away money from this university. I don't know, if this will happen, but Sachs was even involved in this, possible non-accreditation. Just kind of go into that. This involves a lot of stuff, and at the end of the day, you are a public servant, and should the people's opinions not matter?
Is that a question?
Yes, sir, that is a question.
It was a pretty long one.
Yes, sir, yeah.
More of a statement.
No.
Listen, I am a public servant. I guess you can say I work for the state because I actually do get $40 a day when I work. Let me assure you that I don't consider myself working for the state in the sense that I get paid. I'm volunteering my time. And yes, I try to do as best I can whether I'm getting paid or not. And yes, I do care what people say. And I do recall the history of this institution that I'm on, the College Board, which it used to be called, was set up to immunize the control of colleges and universities from political and public kind of whims of the moment. And I do think that it is important to know what the people say. I absolutely listen to all that. I've heard it. But at the end of the day, I have to do what I think is right, whether or not it's the majority view or not. and I take that as my duty, and I try to do it as best I can.
Okay, so back that was a two-part question. I know it was sort of long. I apologize for that, but let's go back to the donors. You're talking about possibly losing a lot of money over this decision. That does negatively impact Ole Miss. So are you doing more harm than good with this decision?
Well, anytime you make a decision, you have to worry about the consequences, and sometimes you have to do what's right, even though it has some cost, and you hope that the benefits of the decision outweigh the costs. You're never sure till you get through, and you just make the best judgment you can. With respect to donors, I hope that most of those people understand that Ole Miss is important to the state. It's critical to, I think, the state in a lot of ways. You may or may not know I'm an Ole Miss graduate.
I knew that, yes, sir.
And, I love Ole Miss, and I want it to survive. And I think most of the people, I'm hoping that when they stop and think about it, they will say, well, no matter how this turns out, I'm still an Ole Miss supporter. It's important for the state, and I hope that in the long run, they will say, listen, okay, I didn't agree with IHL, or whatever happens, they say, I'm still love Ole Miss and will give the money because I think it's good for Ole Miss and the state. That's all I can say.
So let me ask you this. I've thought about this a lot, and I know that much of Jones's career is highlighted by the great things that he's done for the university. He seems to me, and I guess a large group of the public, that he's an ideal candidate for the chancellor position. Obviously, the board disagrees.
No, I voted for him. I helped elect you. I think yes. Do not think that I'm not he probably doesn't fully appreciate that, but I appreciate fully all Dan Jones has done over the years. I was delighted to see him get elected chancellor. That's why all of this is such a difficult thing.
Well, can you tell me, looking ahead, what an ideal candidate for chancellor of the University of Mississippi, what attributes would that person have?
Well, I think that's an interesting discussion to have before I think a member of the IHL jumps out and says, this is what I want to have. I think in the ordinary course of how a search works, we come to Ole Miss and ask the people up there, what is your ideal candidate? And from that, we try to pull together a consensus, because at the end of the day, it's not what Alan Perry thinks is the best ideal candidate, but what we think as a community. Now, there are going to be disagreements on that, and I hope we can, and you never actually get the ideal candidate. The ideal candidate would be, everything in the world. You get the best candidate, but the ideal candidate we still may have disagreement on, but we will do our best to listen to everybody and come up with a description.
Let me ask this. Would you say the ideal candidate would be what Dr. Jones is without the problems at the medical center?
There is no doubt that if the matters that I discussed had not occurred, Dr. Jones's contract would have been unanimously renewed by the board.
Okay, let me ask you this now. Dr. Jones, there's some financial problems at the medical center. Now,
I'm not sure. Now, hold on. I didn't say there are financial problems at the medical center, and I want to be clear about that. That suggests to somebody that might be listening to it that doesn't know that they're either short of money or they're about to go broke or somebody's stolen something. There's no question of either of that. There's no question.
Sorry, I meant to say violations.
And no question of the honesty or integrity of
Right.
Dr. Jones or anybody else at the medical center. This is about prudent business management, not about anything else. And I want that to be very clear.
Okay, yes, sir. I get that. Now, Commissioner Borsig was just recently appointed. Now, he actually, when he was at MUW, failed to run a background check and hired somebody that had been, criminally charged for embezzling. But he was appointed as commissioner. That wasn't seen significant enough when he was appointed commissioner, while Chancellor Jones failed to unauthorize some contracts and being let go of that position. So just kind of tell me how you feel about that.
Well, I don't even know the facts that you're talking about, but I can say we've never hired a president or we've never hired a commissioner who has never made a mistake. I think all of them we hire are going to make mistakes.
Okay, so how did you feel about, I mean, so did you just feel like Chancellor Jones kept making that mistake that you guys told him to fix? Is that what the problem was?
I think that that's fair to say, is that we had insisted upon fixing this problem for a long time, and it wasn't happening. And, you know, it's not like Dr. Jones himself was supposed to go out there and start keeping numbers or anything. We expected, at least I expected, and I think the board expected, a structure. We expected a contract management system and a more robust financial analysis team, and a team that would evaluate business transactions that came in. You know, all that seems to me to be the kind of thing that you ought to have at a big medical center.
So the results just came too late, right, Mr. Perry? The results just came a little too late.
Well, it's a little grudging and a little late.
Okay, so it's not enough for him to save his job. It's just that's how late it was.
Well, you know, yes, and you know, we made the best decision we could based on the information we had at the time, that based on his prior performance. That's about the only thing you can do.
Okay, Lacey, do you have something else?
I think that's all I've got.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Perry. If we, get any more comeback or statements from Chancellor Jones, I'm sure we're going to follow up with you. Thank you so much for interviewing with us.
That'd be great.
All right.
And let me, I guess I agreed with a lot that Dr. Jones said. This is not a zero-sum kind of thing where everything he says is wrong and everything I say is right. It is a matter of perspective. But I'd just like to say, from the board's perspective, we made the best judgment we could.
Okay. Well, I hope to talk to you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.